it's your girl AV, and this is episode 46 of 30, Flirty, and Thriving. And today I am here with Nina of Real Talk with Nina. Okay, Nina, what did we talk? First of all, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me what were we talking about? Real talk about what?
Anything, everything.
Okay.
Thank you so much for having me on, Amber. Yeah, so Real Talk is literally starting all of the really uncomfortable conversations around mental health and sexuality that everybody really wants to have, but most people are really afraid to start them. So I just take one for the team and I start the conversations.
Okay. So what exactly are you? Do you have a title, or what do you call yourself?
I'm a speaker and writer on all things mental health and sexuality, and I'm also a certified sex coach. So I do one-on-one coaching, I do couples coaching, not like a licensed counselor where it's more really focused on sex and
Okay.
and that part of the relationship.
So I have questions.
Yay!
First, how does one become a sex coach?
So a lot of people can call themselves a coach. I mean, the name, to be totally honest with you, I hate the word coach. I feel like it's overused and everybody's a coach, right? I'm a mindset coach. I'm a this coach. I'm a financial coach. I'm a this coach. Everybody says coach. But literally, like I took a course and I got certified as a sex coach. Technically, I can call myself whatever I want, I'm Nina. I'm Nina, and my passion is mental health and sexuality and relationships. My undergrad is in mental health and sexuality. My graduate degree is in health education with a concentration in sexuality. And then I took this additional program to become certified as a sex coach. And I know it just helps people feel more comfortable, like I'm legit. I mean, I was legit before, but I think it just helps people feel a little more comfortable, and I get that.
So, I mean, we all like sex, but you must really like sex because you studied the shit out of it. Like,
Well,
what made you decide that you wanted to actually learn the education behind the activity we all enjoy so much?
yeah, because a lot of people don't enjoy it, right? So here's the thing is that I love sexuality because I love just studying human beings, right? So psychology and sexuality, between the two of them, that pretty much makes who we are. But what I found throughout my own personal life and just talking to other people, there's so much shame and guilt and fear around sexuality. And I said one time, and I think it was a bit of a sobering comment for a lot of people when I said it, but if you just think about it, people take their own lives and the lives of others based on our sexuality or our mental health. So, I think, so when we think of sex, we think of like, oh, it's fun, or what's sexy and what's hot. But that isn't the part that plagues most people. Like if things are good, things are good. Like I'm not needed, right?
Right.
But it's all the stuff that comes in between. It's the, oh my gosh, I'm watching weird porn. What does this mean about me? Or, oh my gosh, I've never had an orgasm. I'm broken. Or a guy who's having erectile disappointments, or, I mean, I'm not sure, am I gay? Am I straight? Am I bi? Or, oh, I'm transgender. What does that mean? All of the dark stuff is really where I focus to shine the light. Really, I always feel like fear, shame, and guilt can only live in the dark. So to me, I'm like, I'm just going to be your flashlight because I'm going to shine light on that shit and it won't survive anymore. So it's not going to matter what turns you on. It's not going to matter how you orgasm. My goal is to get you to accept, own, and explore who you are, period. It doesn't matter what you think is normal. There isn't such a thing.
So this might go really far, but you said you like to shine a flashlight on the dark stuff. So I'm like, obviously there are a lot of fetishes out there. Bestiality, which for those listening who don't know what that is, it's when a person has sex with an animal. There's fetishes like foot fetishes and defecating or urinating on someone. Then we have like the really crazy stuff like being attracted to children. At what point does your fetishes or your fantasies cross the line or become not okay?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question, and it's never too deep with me ever.
Okay, because I was nervous asking that. I was
No,
like, oh, I don't know. We're
no,
just a couple minutes in here.
yeah, no, let's just get right to it. So,
I know, right?
so the
Planning
truth
on
is,
going there, but we're talking and my head was spinning.
so it's a great question, and I've been asked that before. Like, at what point do you tell someone like, this is beyond my scope, right? So here's the thing. I always say if it's legal and consensual, right? So typically bestiality, it can't be consensual because the animal cannot verbally consent to it, right? There are places in the world where it's really not as big of a deal as it is in our country. Actually, I actually have a friend who was doing, it's not my friend who was into it, but he was doing some construction. And one of the guys he was with was from another country, and they were driving past I don't know if it was like a chicken farm or something. And the guy he was working with said something about the chicken, like, have you ever blah, blah, blah with a chicken? And of course, my friend was like, eh? No, we can't do that here, dude. Like, that's not okay here, right? So there's a difference between fantasy and reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've had more than one person come to me that they were having, they had a lot of questions about incest porn, right? They're like, they said, I love watching incest taboo porn. And what does but I'm not like a pedophile, like, or I'm not like incestuous with my kids. Like, am I messed up? And my really, really bold statement is, buddy, there's a niche in porn entirely for that. It wasn't made just for you, right? Like, you're not the only person. And the other piece is, you know damn well those aren't actually people who are related to each other.
They're actors. The same way you know that movies you're watching are not really, there's not really zombies. Like,
right. You know, and then I also asked him a question. I said, let me just bring it to reality for you for a minute. If you went to go pick up your daughter at her friend's house and you walked in on your daughter's friend and her own father, what would you do? Would you sit there and jerk off or what? And he goes, no, I'd probably like kill him with my bare hands. I'm like, and therein lies the difference. Whereas same thing with women. There are so many women that watch lesbian porn. Trust me, not all of those women are lesbians. Not all of those women have ever even touched another woman. That is the power and the awesomeness actually of fantasy, is that fantasies are typically, I would say sexuality is like 90% psychology and 10% how you communicate about it. It's not super common for adults to be sexually attracted to children, right? That one is illegal. And I just, my personal belief is that's a whole other, like, it's an illness, like something's not correct. A lot of it has to do with the more taboo something is, the more it arouses our mind.
Right. I think we're biologically inclined to want the forbidden things.
100%.
Same thing with, like, we have such a problem with like underage drinking here in the United States because it's so, if you can't do that, it's so taboo. But there are other countries where they don't have drinking laws that restrict, people of certain age drinking. They don't have as many young children getting into accidents or overdosing or having alcohol poisoning or any of they just don't have the same issues because it's not a taboo thing. You can have a beer or a glass of wine with dinner at 12 and that's fine.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. In European cultures, that's so normal. And even I'm not European, I wasn't born in Europe, but I will say that my dad's side was. But growing up, when I hit high school or maybe even middle school, I honestly think my parents were like, do you want to taste wine? I was like, okay. I never was really interested in drinking. I actually didn't really start drinking until I had kids. but nothing, it wasn't really exciting. I was kind of like, oh, you mean the stuff that my parents drink? Like, and then of course in high school, you still have these kids puking. I'm like, I'm not really getting the whole like vibe about the whole let's drink and puke and like have sex with people that you cry about tomorrow. Like, never really was my jam, but yeah, the whole bestiality thing is fantasy wise, it's not really as uncommon as people think because it's so far out there. And there's also a control and power piece to it. And that's also where you get these people that like the, 18-year-old, of course they're 18 in porn, where it's like men will specifically look for teens. It's not because they're pedophiles. It's because there's this power control thing that is attractive to them. So most human beings that are productive in our society are not pedophiles. So
in your expert opinion, it's healthy to have fantasies as long as you understand the difference between fantasy and reality and what fantasies are okay to act on and consensuality. Consensualness?
Yeah, consent. Yeah, consent.
Yeah. Like consensuality.
Well, it's like two good words, right? Consent and sensuality. That's a great word.
Consensuality. Yeah, there we go. So
yeah.
As long as there's consent in your fantasies,
and they're legal.
Then right. They're healthy to have. So speaking of having fantasies and maybe wanting to act on some of those fantasies, there are different fantasies, maybe like wife swapping or inviting someone else into the bedroom and things like that, which I think, sounds like fun in fantasy or in theory, but the reality of it is, I don't know, you'd have to tell me so much more, I imagine. I imagine that physically and emotionally, there's more to it than what goes on in your head. I think physically, as far as being safe, right? And the importance of like STD testing and using protection and things like that, as well as the emotional aspect of it. Are you going to be okay watching your partner with someone else? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and it's funny that you brought up wife swapping. That's a hot topic. I hate like statistics, but I always say like most, because it just makes me feel safer. But like most men that I have spoken with have expressed the desire to watch their female partner with another man, and it's a really strong desire. And I was on a show a week or two ago talking specifically about the psychology behind wife swapping or hot wifing or cuckolding, all those terms, where the psychology really comes down to, especially in long-term relationships. So it's not super common to start out a relationship and be like, hey, be my girlfriend. I really want to see you have sex with other guys. Like, I mean, they exist. But the majority of people that I speak to, and this goes for all genders, because I've coached women who are like, I would love to see my husband with another woman. The philosophy behind it is the same, right? To desire or to lust or to want is typically you're going after something that you don't have, right? Or you don't know about. Well, when you're in a long-term relationship, a lot of that chase is gone, right? You're with them. You might be living with them. You've had kids with them. You hear them fart. You see their shit stains in the laundry. Like it gets old pretty fast, right? And side note, women get bored with monogamy quicker than men. I was just reading about this, Amber, on I think it was Justin Lay Miller, who I just love his work. He's incredible. He did like a study of like over 4,000 people, all based on fantasies. That he's amazing. And I think I was reading an article on his blog about cheating and how there wasn't a massive difference in infidelity amongst genders. And I think that shocked me too. I'm not going to lie. However, the further I get into my career, it actually makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes the reasons for infidelity are different. And I think as female and women empowerment movement grows, I think maybe more women actually will be like, you know what? I know what I deserve. I'm going out. I don't want to lose my family. So I'm going to do this behind the scenes and get what I need. But, so there isn't a massive difference. There isn't a difference that you and I would think as far as genders and infidelity go. But going back to it. So when we're with somebody for a really long time, we start to get really comfortable, right? And comfort breeds, monotony breeds comfort, breeds like orgasm blocker. Like it's lame, right? And a lot of the people that I coach are actually in mid-marriage, 15 plus years, because right about then is typically when if they have children, they're at an age where they're semi-independent. I don't mean independent like, off to college necessarily. Like I look at my kids as independent. I mean, they're in grade school, but like I don't have to, like they can make their own food. Like I tell them to go to bed, they go to bed, tell them to shower, they shower. I have more, like I have more time to be me and to be with my husband. But it's, so two different reasons. For men, they're able to sexualize their wives. And at times that can be difficult when, especially if you have a children together, sometimes men look at their wives as like, oh, I can't like look at her the same way I look at this woman over there that I don't know. Like the stuff that I really want to do, I couldn't do with my wife. Like, that's not right. That's like disrespectful.
Mother. Oh my gosh. I can't do
right?
that to my mother.
Right. I'm like, how do you think our kids got here, baby? Come on. Like, you got to give us more credit, man. Moms were sexy as hell. And so I think that's a big thing, is like to be able to view your partner through somebody else's eyes is very erotic. It's very arousing. You're literally seeing almost like you don't even know who they are. You start to almost, I don't want to say objectified, but I also think that that's not always a bad word. When you're in a long-term relationship, I've heard women say to me, guys, sometimes I just want to be objectified by my husband. I don't want to be respected, like in the bedroom, like overall, of course.
Yeah, for sure. Like you better respect me when we leave this room.
Right. Right.
No,
like before I get off, just totally disrespect me. But afterwards, like
get off.
Right. Then it's back to normal. But I think our culture as a whole really downplays female sexuality. They really are. Society really teaches us that women are really lame sexually. And so with that, women have this shame around their sexual desires or fantasies. And so they just kind of like curl up in a ball. And they kind of are like, sure, like whatever you want to do, I'll do. Like, I'm just here to receive, like I'm just here to be like a whole, really. And so we don't really give women a lot of credit for their sexual mind. I will tell you that the fantasies that women have are typically much more taboo than men. Much more taboo. I was just speaking to a couple of my girlfriends recently, and we were joking but not joking, about gay porn, like seeing two men together or seeing a bisexual man or like, oh my God, that's so hot. That's so hot. I'm not saying every woman feels this way, but when they've told their husbands, if they even want to tell their husbands, like for me, I'm so open, I don't really care, but most are not, because we're kind of like, we're not supposed to have any kind of fantasies outside of monogamy and raising children and like, just being the good little housewives that we're supposed to be. When in reality, of female sexuality, I don't typically like to like throw out gender-based sexuality, but if we're really talking about biologically, women are sexual as hell. We're just trained to like temper it, right? And that's why I think a lot of times in your 30s and 40s, we get to an age where society all of a sudden kind of allows us to be sexual, and we're like, thank God. And now we're like, oh my gosh, like all these things we want to do with it, right? And it's usually at that point too where our husbands are typically kind of like, you've been lame for so long. And then when we're finally like, you know what? I've been thinking about doing this. Our husbands are like, like, what? Like, why didn't you tell me this 10 years ago? I'm like, I wasn't tapped into that 10 years ago. So I think that seeing your wife please another man or seeing your wife being desired by another man also kind of initiates that primal like competition vibe that I've had men literally say the best sex that I have with my wife is after I watch her with another man, because I had to like reclaim her. Like, I'm going to take her back and I'm going to like show her that she's mine. I was just reading an article too about when men, if there's infidelity in a relationship, oftentimes, regardless of the partner who's not faithful, if they work it out and come back together, it's pretty primal. Like the sex is pretty nuts because you no longer feel complacent, like, oh, I have my partner, they're not going anywhere. Well, guess what? They did. So you gotta fight for it a little bit. And that drive is like, I always call it a healthy jealousy. It's like, yes, I'm jealous, but not to the point where I'm going to shut you down. I'm going to I'm going to show you that, what you have. And it's fascinating.
So what are your thoughts or cautions on maybe one partner wanting to invite that and the other partner not sure, or giving in, or being a little bit more conservative? And I guess the emotional aspect of what bringing someone else into the bedroom, what it can do.
If you look at sexuality as a spectrum, right? So monogamy itself is actually a spectrum. So very few people thrive happily in a 100% monogamous relationship. Now, before people are like, what? I'm in a monogamy. Give me a second. When you talk about 100% monogamy, you are literally talking about not entertaining anything about another person. No flirting, no, no nothing, right? It's really just 100%. It's you and your partner.
What about fantasy?
What's that?
Be 100% monogamous and still fantasize about another person, but no flirting, no talking, no nothing, just in your head.
Well, I guess it depends on how you define monogamy with your partner. And that's something I ask people too, right when I start coaching. I'm like, because a lot of times when I'm coaching, they're talking about opening up their marriage. It's, bringing a fantasy to reality, which often involves something a little out of the traditional monogamy kind of a vibe. It's really, what do you consider? What are your relationship agreements? And if you look up the definition of monogamy, it's probably going to change across the board. But I know most people, we think of physically, for sure, not touching anybody else. And then I think over the years too, it's been emotionally, with the internet, my gosh, if I'm sex talking to somebody else, is that cheating? I don't know. It depends on your relationship. So I call them relationship agreements. What's allowed in your relationship? Because it's different for everyone. There are some times where I'll say something. A couple of weeks ago, I said something like, oh, my husband's crush was at the gym. So I told him that she was there. And they were like, you're okay with your husband having a crush at the gym? And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, really? We've been together for almost 17 years. If I think that I am the only woman that he finds attractive or wants to sleep with, I'm in the wrong profession, and I really don't understand human sexuality, So I, for me, what works is openness. I would rather be open about it and he'd be like, oh yeah, she's super hot, than me wonder, does he think she's hot? Do they flirt? What, that works for me. Secrets make me feel very insecure. So I would rather have a really painful truth, oh yeah, she's really hot, I'd love to flirt with her, I'd love to do this.
So that would be communication with your partner is key here.
Yeah.
What are our relationships agreements? What is going to make you comfortable or uncomfortable if I did this? Having these conversations in the relationship can avoid a lot of reasons to lie in the future, or can avoid a lot of issues or trust being broken, or or that, you know what I mean? I think, but like you said earlier, I think it's for most people, talking about sex is taboo, even with your partner.
100%.
Just do it. Don't talk about it. Let's just
100%. And everyone always says, oh, it's so much harder for women to talk about what they want than men. There's truth to that, but I also don't want to oversimplify men either. You'd be surprised what men would be okay with if they thought for 1 second their wife wouldn't reject the thought, right? So you had asked me what kind of things would come up in a conversation if we were looking to wife swap or have a threesome. When you have agreements, what works for one partner might not always work for the other. And so for example, my husband could say, and I'm making, this isn't the truth, but this is just an example. If I might be super turned on, actually, this is actually true. This example is true. So I'm just going to put myself out there. I think it's super hot when my husband tells me, when I ask him about past girlfriends, now mind you, we've been together for 17 years. So when I say girlfriends, we're talking college. So it's been a long time. I love hearing about him and past girls because I look at him in a totally different way than I see him now. It's super, super hot to me. I don't get jealous. Like literally those same girls were like married with kids by now, but like, I love hearing about it. Like, super hot. He, on the other hand, complete opposite perspective. He does not want to hear about my sexual life before him. So if I were to say now with him, oh, that guy is super hot, like, oh, what I would do to have sex with him, that'd be super hot. Doesn't faze him. Doesn't bother him at all because I'm his. We're together. He knows about it. It's not a threat. But like pre-husband Nina, he feels like he has no control over that. Like he doesn't want to know like who I was before him. Whereas I think it's super hot, right? So what works, it's really not just like, okay, well, if that's okay for you, that's okay for me, right? No, it isn't. What did he, and he even said to me, what did he say? What's fair is not always equal, or what's equal is not always fair. He said one of those and it made sense. There are totally things that I'm okay with that he's not okay with. So some of the questions you want to ask, why are you doing it? If you are doing it to spice up your sex life, totally valid reason. And there's a gazillion other processes I would take you through. If you're doing it to save your relationship, I'm telling you right now, it ain't gonna work. In order, you can imagine, if you do not have a strong foundation before you go into sleeping with other people, I don't want to say 100% failure rate, but it's really freaking high. If you have a strong foundation, like I'm thinking of a specific client, she called me, she'd been married for 15, 20 years. They have kids, they're best friends. They've talked about this and they both knew that the wife was talking to me. That is a really great start. They're both on board. They've talked about it. It still doesn't mean you're ready tomorrow.
Right.
I mean, I think we coached for 8 or 9 months and they still hadn't done it at that point. So it's, have you ever even discussed other people just verbally? So as a coach, I would take you step by step by step so that you don't go from A to X when you really need to go from A to B. So like, have you even talked to each other about people that you find attractive, real people? Like, yeah, I had this huge crush on this guy at work. He's super hot. If your husband's like, what the F? Like, what? Okay, guess what? Swinging ain't going to happen for you tomorrow, right? Or if he was like, really? Like, that's really hot. Like, what would you do with him if you had him in a room? Then I'm like, okay, maybe we can go to like the next level right now. And maybe that's going to a strip club together.
Right.
So now we're not really threatened emotionally. Like, we're not like, I don't really think that if my husband gets a lap dance, he's going to fall in love with it. I mean, he might, I don't know. But like in my head, I'm not threatened by the exotic dancer at that point. But I can watch my husband physically desire another woman that probably has a better body than me, more attractive. And if I can sit with that and I'm like, that's really hot. Okay, let's take it a step further. So we take little steps. I would never really recommend someone going, you know what, my husband and I totally think, swinging or being is really hot. We're going to try it tomorrow. When you're in fantasy land, everything is hot. Everything is hot. That's why it's fantasy. But bringing it to reality all of a sudden, and jealousy is normal. Even in like people who have been swinging for decades, jealousy is a human emotion. That isn't going to go away, but it's how you communicate. So it's really just, what's the purpose of it? What are your rules? I mean, there is like an infinite amount of ways that could go. There could be, they can't live in the same state. We have to be together when we do it. We can't exchange contact information. We can only do it when we're on vacation. We can't do it in our bed. I mean, there's so many things that we don't.
And it's probably very different. Like what works for one person might not work for another. And that's why it's important to have these conversations with your partner and understand what's going to make them comfortable enough to take this next step and what's going to make you comfortable enough. Where can you guys compromise and come to an agreement where you're both enthusiastically ready to move forward with it and there are no reservations.
That's a great word. I love how you said enthusiastic consent, because people use the word consent as yes or no. right? There are plenty of times in my life that I've said yes when I didn't want to do something, either because they kept asking me. I don't mean sexually necessarily. I mean,
Yeah, but no.
maybe once or twice in my life for sure, but anything in life. Bosses, we do it all the time. Bosses are like, you know what? I had a boss call me on my maternity leave to do some work, which is like illegal. But I was so afraid that I was going to lose my job if I said no. So I said yes. And so I think enthusiastic consent is the difference between being battered down to say yes or like, oh my God, like, I'm so glad you brought that up because you have no idea. Yeah. Like, I mean,
I'm glad we came. Yes. Like,
yeah.
you're excited. You're like, let's do this. Now that I feel good about it. That's
right.
The difference between just being like, okay, let's do it versus let's do this, you know?
Exactly. Cause that, all right. Yep. No, we can do it. That is going to lead to a divorce or a breakup. Because what happens is she's letting you know, or he is letting you know right there, I'm not super sure about this, but I love you and I want you to be turned on. Okay, well, that just completely annihilated any equality in this adventure. And when you are going on sexual adventures, when you're in a relationship, you're going on it as for reasons pertaining to you as a couple.
Right.
You know, so yeah, enthusiastic consent is like, yeah, I'm super down for it. Let's do it. That's what you want to hear.
So bringing another person to the bedroom is only one way to spice up your sex life, but obviously there are a million more, including bringing toys, watching things, conversations. I mean, there's a million different things you can do to spice up your sex life, and explore your own body, get familiar with your own body and your own sexuality, and then being able to also explore your partner's body. I think in order for you to be able to communicate to your partner what feels good and what doesn't feel good, you have to know by exploring yourself. So what do you have to say about, I don't know what it would be called, but like self-exploration or, the exploration of your partner?
So I'm probably one of the biggest cheerleaders for masturbation, like, that lives on the face of the earth. Like, I have zero shame. Like, I literally, Amber, I have missed picking up my kids at the bus because it was just taking me too long. Like, you want to talk about a mom fail, right? And don't edit this shit out because we need to talk about this as a culture.
Don't edit this shit out, damn it. I need people to know.
People need to know that this happens. And I wish I had taken a screenshot of my text message barrage to my husband afterwards going, I'm going to hell. Like, I'm not really religious, but like, I was like, I'm going to mom hell. The bus company just called me because I wasn't to the bus stop at the right time to grab my kids. And it wasn't because I fell asleep. It was because I was taking too damn long, but I was so close. So I was like, I can do this. I'm just going to run to the bus. That's all. I'm just going to get off and run. And I missed the kids. I mean, that will go down in history as like why I probably should never be a mom. Like, I should go to mom jail forever. So masturbation is the greatest thing in the world. And there are so many women who do not. There are women who want to so bad and they have no idea how to. And I'm not talking about 18-year-old girls. I'm talking about women, 20, 30, 40.
So what would advice be to someone who wants to start exploring themselves and doesn't even know where to begin?
So I usually have them start with fantasies, right? So our brain is our biggest sex organ, not our vagina, not our penis. That's secondary, believe it or not. So I always joke when people say, oh, guys think with their dicks. No, actually, their brain is having these sexual thoughts, right? So I know it's usually just kind of like a joke, but I just want to be clear. Our brain is actually the biggest sex organ. And so I will start with them saying, forget about touching your body for a second, because especially with women, we have to be here first. Like I say, look, guys, you could go down on a woman for 5 hours. And if her head is like, I look really fat. Oh my gosh. Like, how does it smell? How does it taste? I haven't paid my bills as well. It's never going to happen. Never going to happen. And I think a lot of that is true for men. I just think psychologically it's easier for men to push through that. Whereas women, I think we just have a harder time. That's all. But
Yeah, I think for women, it's definitely more mental. We
oh
can
yeah,
get in the right headspace.
yeah, big time. And I think it's usually I'll say, I want you to write down your fantasies. You never have to tell me, but I need you to start thinking about it. You know, like what turns you on? Forget how to touch your body, because you can touch your body all you want. I'm not turned on right now, so touching my boobs right now is no more sexual than when I nursed my damn kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it does nothing. So what turns you on? And I always approach the topic of porn. Again, I'm a huge advocate of porn. I am. Productive watching of porn, and there are some do's and don'ts in my opinion, but just I'll ask, are you comfortable watching porn? I've had some women like, no, I'm not there yet. I'm like, all right, cool, you have a brain, right? So let's start there. And sometimes I'll just throw stuff out, like I'll say, let me give you some common fantasies for women. You don't have to tell me if any of them resonate with you, but I'm just going to help you. So we start with just fantasies. And then like the next time I talk to them, like, did you come up with any? Yeah, I have two. Awesome. This week for your homework. I mean, coaching with me is like the best homework ever, right? So I'm like, okay, so for next week, I literally want you to just focus on those fantasies. You don't worry about touching yourself, nothing. Focus on those. I want you to elaborate them a little bit, maybe even write it down, maybe write a story, right? If you want to try entering the porn world, now you know what you're going to type in. So I always tell people, when you go to a porn site, use the search bar. I'm big on that, because if you don't, what you're going to run into are things that, one, could be triggering for trauma survivors. Two, could be a turn off and ruin your whole masturbation session, right? Most porn sites have like a gazillion images all on that first page.
Mm-hmm.
So use the search. Okay, I know that threesomes turn me on. I'm going to type in homemade. I'm big on homemade too. I tell people, watch homemade porn.
It's
It's
more
more
realistic.
realistic. It's more realistic, you know. So type in homemade threesome, male, female, or female, male, whatever it is. And then we go from there, because what will inevitably happen is once the brain is aroused, it sends those signals to the other parts going, hey, wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is good here. And eventually it's a natural feeling. Like you'll feel pressure in your vulva, like, oh, like if I don't touch this, someone's got to touch it, right? And that's where you want to get to. And I always tell guys this in heterosexual relationships, stop touching her vulva so quickly. Like she has to want it first. It's like if a guy had a flaccid penis and I was like, go up to her, I'm like, he's like, dude, what? Like, where's that coming from? Right? Don't do that. It just feels better when a guy is hard. It's no different for us.
Right.
It takes on average 20 minutes. Average. There are women that take an hour, 2 hours. It takes about 20 minutes for a woman to actually be aroused. Forget orgasm. It hasn't even happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
About 20 minutes of foreplay. And again, foreplay does not necessarily mean having anything to do with our vagina.
Real quick, a tip for women who have a problem with their men being more, maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? Wanting to have sex more. And maybe you not always being ready for it. If you know he's going to come home from work or come home from a night out with the guys, and he's going to want to do that, and you're not going to be ready or in the mood, take some time to get yourself ready. Prep and prime, like start watching porn or thinking about fantasies or touching yourself or using your toys or whatever to get ready. So when he gets home, you're already prepped and like ready for whatever his advances are going to be.
100%. Because the reality is sometimes we don't have time for foreplay, right? I mean, like I got 2 kids. 99% of the time, we don't have time for that. It's like 11 o'clock by the time we're into bed. You know, like it's reality, right? Reality is not porn. It's not sexy. It's not like hours and hours of him rubbing all over me. Like this is reality, right? I'm always worried someone's going to come in or there's going to be a knock at the door or somebody got a stomach bug and I got to like put on my clothes and go clean up puke. I mean, that's the reality, you know? But 100%, Amber, if you know, hey, my husband's been like horny all day and I know that tonight he's going to want it, well then take ownership of your own sexuality and the excitement of your relationship. No one's ever going to give you an orgasm. I don't believe that at all. Nobody can give it to you.
Ooh, I like that.
You have to own it. You're either going to give it to yourself, or you're going to allow
I love that.
someone else to help you get there. Like, I think for a lot of women, to be honest with you, especially, it's actually really difficult for us to just kind of lay there and receive pleasure. It's hard for a lot of us. I know I can't do that.
I'm like, I have 5 billion questions for you. I really do. I literally, when you started talking, I was like, I got a question about that. I got a question about that. And then I was just
We'll
like,
have a part 2.
we need to, because I didn't even get to everything I wanted to get to. And I'm like, I know we got to wrap up, but like, I have a billion questions. So if for those who are listening or watching who maybe also have questions or maybe want a little bit more of a one-on-one experience with you, can you tell people how they can find you, what it is that you do, all that good stuff?
Absolutely. So yeah, you can find me. My website is realtalkwithnina.com. On Instagram, it's Nina Real Talk. Facebook, it's Real Talk with Nina is my group. So YouTube is Real Talk with Nina. Somebody's looking to coach with me. We usually have about a 20-minute discovery call, I call it, just to make sure that it's a good fit and that I can actually help you. You know, I've had people come to me with stuff that I'm like, you know what, you deserve a licensed therapist that specializes in, you know, trauma, or I have experience in that, but nowhere near what people deserve, you know, and I'm not too proud to say, I'm not sure this is a good fit, you know, but we have like a 20-minute phone call and figure out if it's right. And if it is, we talk about, okay, there's no packages, there's no lock in. I'm just like the same. Look, if you want to do it weekly, great. If you want to do it bi-weekly, great. Once a month, great. As needed, great. Like whatever. I mean, it doesn't, sometimes people will call me 3 times in a week. They're like, you know, that's okay too, you know, so that's how you can find me.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so excited to have had this conversation with you, and I cannot wait for a part 2 because I have so many more questions. Thank you.
Thank you.